Have you ever thought about how your jaw can affect your birth experience? Now, I understand that might sound a little strange, but there's actually a fascinating connection between your jaw and pelvic floor that's incredibly important to your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery journey. And in this short video, you're going to learn all about this mind, body, jaw, pelvic floor connection, along with its vital role in supporting a positive birth outcome. So if you're currently pregnant or in your postnatal recovery journey, keep listening because this video is absolutely for you. Now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll probably already know how utterly fascinating I find the human body. And one of the reasons for this is how intricately interconnected the different systems are. And one network that falls into this category is a network called the fascial system. So the fascial system is a continuous network of connective tissue that envelops and interconnects every muscle, bone, and organ in our bodies and acts as a communication highway, transmitting mechanical forces and signals throughout our bodies. Now, of course, the reason why I'm making this video is because it just so happens there is a fascial line that extends from the jaw down through our necks and into our pelvic floors, creating a continuous line of tension and communication, meaning that any tension or tightness in the jaw can directly impact the pelvic floor and vice versa. And going even deeper, this jaw-pelvic floor connection can actually be traced back to the earliest stages of embryonic development, where around day 15 of gestation, a process called gastrulation occurs, during which two depressions form on the dorsal or posterior side of the embryo. Now, one of these depressions becomes the oropharyngeal membrane, which eventually forms the mouth, while on the other, the cloacal membrane, which is the beginnings of the openings of the urinary, reproductive, and digestive tracts, right? Now, this early connection between the mouth and pelvic region continues as the spine develops, creating a continuous line of communication between these two areas. Now, of course, we can't talk about this connection without addressing it from an emotional level as well, because it's widely known that stress, trauma, and strong emotions can manifest physically in the body. But when it comes to stress and the pelvic floor, I'm not going to go too deep into this because I've already done a video on stress and the pelvic floor, which you can find on my page. But when it comes to stress, trauma, or emotion, this can often contribute to increased tension throughout the fascial system, including the jaw and pelvic floor, leading to things like unconscious clenching of the jaw and tightening of the pelvic floor muscles. And some people even have unconscious stress-related holding patterns through their pelvic floor. And this is actually quite common for those who have hypertonic or tight pelvic floors. And there's even been studies showing increased pelvic floor muscle activity in response to threatening film excerpts. That's just watching something, right? And this is a really important point, so I want you to keep this in mind when it comes to the birth. And no doubt you are probably wondering, well, what does all of this have to do with your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery journey? And as I'm sure you know, during pregnancy, your body goes through an immense amount of changes. You've got hormonal changes, which impact your joints, ligaments, and tendons. You've got changes in weight and weight distribution, as well as postural changes. And all of this can put more strain on the fascial system, including that jaw to pelvic floor connection. And while we want you to maintain strength through your pelvic floor during pregnancy, being a muscle, there also needs to be a relaxation aspect of it to allow the muscle to relax and contract correctly. And when it comes to your birth, if you're delivering vaginally, the last thing you want when your pelvic floor needs to stretch up to 3 times its normal length is tension or tightness through your pelvic floor. And we're going to bring this back to that point that I made earlier about studies showing increased pelvic floor muscle activity in response to threatening film excerpts, because when it comes to birth, If at any stage a woman feels threatened, this can have a significant impact on the progression of her labour. And if we think about this one more deeply, as humans, we're still members of a large group of animals known as mammals. So at our core, we are still animals, and in the animal kingdom, if an animal giving birth feels threatened, their labour will stall to allow them to find safety. As humans, our natural response when we feel threatened is fight, flight, freeze or fawn. And part of that fight response is a clenched jaw and grinding your teeth. And I don't know about you, but one thing for me that really signals I'm stressed is grinding my teeth at night and waking up with a sore jaw. So when we take all of this into account, it's no wonder midwives encourage low-pitched noises and tones, those very guttural noises like groans, moans, and animal-like noises. Singing or humming in low tones is also another popular choice. Why? Because it allows the jaw and throat to relax. And when the jaw and throat are relaxed, it allows the pelvic floor to relax as well, which supports labour progression. And as Dr. Angela James put it on the Pregnancy Process podcast, open jaw, open floor. And when it comes to your postnatal period, the pelvic floor muscles are often weakened from the pressures of pregnancy and birth, which can lead to issues like urinary or fecal incontinence and pelvic organ prolapse. And of course, that jaw connection comes into play again due to the tension transferring up and down this highway, which can exacerbate existing issues or create new ones. And there are suggestions that addressing jaw tension through physical therapy, massage, and relaxation practices can actually aid in the pelvic floor rehabilitation process. But I want you to remember back to the pelvic floor being a muscle that needs to be able to relax and contract. The same thing applies when you're trying to strengthen it. Of course, when you look at the potential causes of tightness in relation to this connection, you've got the mental and emotional side of things like stress and even potential fear, let's say around the birth. And then you have the physical, postural side of things that we mentioned earlier, like weight gain, hormones, all that type of thing. When you look at these two aspects, there are many things that you can do during your pregnancy that can help support this vital connection. So from a physical, postural side of things, training during pregnancy is vital in building or maintaining your strength to help support the physical impacts of pregnancy. And when I say training, of course I mean principle-based program design with individualized exercise prescription that's correctly timed, sequenced, and adjusts over time so your training progresses with you as your pregnancy progresses, not one size fits all, right? But 3 specific exercises or stretches that you can incorporate in your pregnancy journey right now that will help support this deep connection are cat-cow, child's pose, and a supported butterfly stretch. Now, a side note on the butterfly stretches, I would not recommend this if you have pelvic girdle pain. And when doing these stretches, you can also incorporate the breathing techniques that I mentioned in the Stress on Your Pelvic Floor video, which you will find on my page. And if you're really wanting to dive deep into this, on the out breath, you can start adding some of those more guttural sounds like moans and groans and animal-like noises that we've already mentioned that can help relax that pelvic floor. Now, of course, when it comes to the pelvic floor and your pregnancy and postnatal journey, the gold standard is always to have your pelvic floor assessed by a specialist women's health or pelvic health physio. And you'll also find most physios in this space offer what they call birth prep, which specifically helps with prepping your pelvic floor for birth. And for me, this is a not negotiable when working with pregnant and postnatal women, because sadly, the statistics show up to 50% of women don't activate their pelvic floor correctly, and as an internal muscle, we just don't know whether it's tight, weak, or tight, hiding weakness. The only way to truly know is to have your pelvic floor assessed by a professional. But on the stress management side of things, this is really important as well, but it's also super personal to the individual. But your common stress management techniques that I personally implement into my own life are exercise, good nutrition, getting adequate sleep, acupuncture, meditation, which includes a rounding practice, which is a series of stretches and breath work, and therapy. And of course, this list goes on and is truly individual. But as you can see, you cannot separate the mind, body, jaw, pelvic floor connection. And you can't overlook how important this connection is in your overall health and well-being through your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum recovery journey. So if you're currently pregnant or in your postnatal recovery journey, I encourage you to keep this mind-body connection in mind. Implement those 3 stretches into your weekly well-being practices, and don't ignore any jaw tension or clenching that you might experience. It could actually be a sign that your pelvic floor needs some love too. And I hope this video helped. Of course, if you'd like more in-depth pregnancy-specific content, feel free to apply to my complimentary but private community, the Preggy Training Crew. The link is in my bio.